Thanks, everyone. When I've told people I'm doing this talk, they've been so excited for me because it is a really big deal. Until I tell them that the theme is acceptance, then the reaction is kind of like, "Oh, that's tough." And I get it. Like, it feels like a heavy word. It has weight to it, and it kind of feels serious. And I was really interested in working out why we feel this way when we hear the word acceptance. So I Googled what is acceptance, and Google told me it was the act of consenting to receiving an object, which is so boring, like so neutral. Where's the feeling? So I can't start my talk like that. So I was trying to think of a metaphor for acceptance to kind of tie this little talk together. And this is kind of inspired by, I've been spending the last 3 weeks actually on a holiday with my family. And my family loves to celebrate, any excuse to do so. So every night of this holiday is a festive occasion. We'll cook lots of share plates through the day, and we'll sit around this big table and we'll drink an impressive amount of wine. And so this is where this metaphor is coming from. Just go with me for a sec. Picture you're just at a big dinner table with lots of people and lots of shared plates, and you've enjoyed your meal, you're feeling pretty full. The unwritten rule of share plate eating is you don't take the last portion of food on the plate, you just let it be there to be polite. So picture you here, the closest plate to you has one portion of food left on it. Let's say it's a delicious little grilled tomato. You glance at the tomato and then look away. You're aware of the tomato, but you don't want the tomato, you're full. And you hope someone else actually is going to eat that tomato. But in the nanosecond that you looked at the tomato, someone saw you look at the tomato. And so as per the rules of shared dining, they say to you, "Oh, Ellen, have that last tomato." And you have to say "Oh no, I couldn't, I've had 3 tomatoes already, I'm full." And then they have to say "No, it's yours, go on, eat it." And then you kind of have to stand a bit firmer and be "No, that's fine, actually, I'm quite full. Someone else have it, please." But by this stage, they've already got the tomato in the tongs, and they're waving it in front of you, and they're staring at you directly in the eye, and they're telling you "Eat it, Ellen." So you eat it. And I think that's acceptance, right? I saw the tomato, I tried to ignore the tomato, I tried to deny the tomato, but the tomato was heading my way no matter what. And a part of me knew that it was my tomato all along. So if I were to define acceptance, I think acceptance is the end point of a long journey to coming to know what you already knew. And I think the literal definition misses the interesting part of acceptance, which is the part that we feel in our bodies when we hear the word, which is the journey and the battle and the denial that had to occur beforehand. So, clunky and long introduction aside, I actually do know a bit about acceptance, and not just any kind of acceptance, but the type that everyone loves talking about in a public forum, self-acceptance. So I'm going to be sharing a story today about the journey that I took in order to accept something that was staring at me in the eyes with the tongs out for a really long time. But first, I must tell you who I am. So I'm an artist, and as an artist, I'm really interested in our inner worlds. So all of the thoughts and dreams and secrets and memories and contradictions and our behaviours and beliefs, all the things that are contained within our brains that no one else can see, I'm really interested in that. Our brains hold our entire universe within it, and each one is completely unique to us. And I love thinking about that, and I love creating art based on that idea. 9 years ago, I had graduated from my bachelor's in design, and I was a few months into a full-time graphic design job. I was always a creative kid, but I developed my style of art while I was studying, creating really fun, graphic, cartoony illustrations, and all I wanted to do was express myself in this way and make things that I liked. So I would make illustrations in my spare time and share them online. And keep in mind, these were very simple times in the algorithmic sense of the internet. So I had a Tumblr with 20 followers maybe. So it was totally out of the blue and a really big surprise when like the art director of a magazine in New York commissioned me to do a double-page editorial illustration and pay me like good money for it. And I really didn't need any more encouragement than that one experience to go like, well, I want to do this. I don't want to be a graphic designer. I want to be an illustrator. So I packed up my life in Sydney and I moved to Melbourne. My plan, if we would be so bold as to call it that, was to not get a job, be broke for as long as I could possibly stand to do so, and just make art and get better and share it and hopefully attract interest in it, and find other people like this guy in New York who wanted to pay me. So I really am someone who works hard at the things that I'm passionate about. So I worked super hard, and I was fortunate enough to get signed to Jackie Winter, which is the commercial illustration agency here in Collingwood, less than a year later, which was super early in my career and like super early in my adult life, actually. So after that, things took off immediately, and I found people really resonated with what I did, which was amazing. And since then, I've worked on so many amazing projects and worked with brands all over the world and really cool people and done lots of really fun things. And it's just been a really big dream come true in many senses. I soon began to integrate animation and murals and installation into my practice because I really enjoy bringing things to life beyond what I could draw on a 2D plane. And I also really like the physical aspect of making stuff and the challenge of figuring out how to do new things. And I think that energy of like wanting to do new things has always made me really excited in my work and excited where it's going. And I just feel so lucky and grateful that, you know, I always felt like I was a bit of a square peg in a world of round holes, and I was able to, you know, I didn't really fit in school or like in the work environment, and so I was able to define and navigate and like make this career for myself that worked for me, and I feel so lucky to have been able to do that. What I'm most proud of is the exhibition I've wrapped up earlier this year called She's on Another Planet. So it's based on this narrative about the groundskeeper of a planet that's overrun by all these weird and wild plants and animals. And it's based on this story. This groundskeeper is trying to keep the world kind of under control. And the more that she tries to do so, the more that the planet tries to fight back. And so she goes on this kind of journey of all through this planet, and she eventually has to realise that she can't be in control of this environment because the environment is more powerful than her. So she just has to let go of the control and realise that the planet is in its own balance of itself. It's really an allegory for our inner selves. So the protagonist represents our conscious self trying to control the parts of ourselves that make us whole. And it was really inspired by this trip that I went to Magnetic Island. So I did an artist residency for a week in Magnetic Island, and Magnetic Island is a small island off the coast of Townsville. It's really not very far from the mainland of Australia, but it's got its own very unique ecosystem, and it really made me think about how environments are kind of like people. Like this island had adapted to the parameters that it was given. So, and I think people are like that as well. So, like we're born with traits, and we adapt to the things that happen to us. And the natural environment does the same thing. So that really made me think about how I could present our inner worlds as an actual environment. Like, what would our brains look like if it was a planet? And yeah, I loved like developing this process. I just went to the island and I had a pencil and paper and I drew for a week, and that's where that really started. And then a year later, I launched the exhibition. So the reason I'm really proud of this work is that it really is me at my most genuine. I wanted to create something that I thought was good and meaningful and not worry about what other people thought. And it's the culmination of not just artistic development, but like years and years of my own personal growth. And I've come to realise that when you're an artist, it's really difficult to differentiate between personal growth and artistic growth. Because for me, I feel like the line is quite blurred, and one kind of tends to feed the other. Like, as I grow as a person, my art changes and develops. And when I'm working on art, I'm making art, I am able to process things that are happening in my life, so it feeds the personal development. which is great. Like, I don't know any other professions that allows you to have that relationship with your work. The flip side of that is that it's hard to talk about my work without getting super vulnerable and oversharing, which I'm about to do now, so buckle up. So, as I was saying, I kind of hit my stride in my early to mid-20s and was building my career up super fast, which was really exciting. But I didn't really have the life experience to know how to take care of myself, let alone manage all the responsibilities that come with being your own boss. So I regularly took on too much, and I worked insane hours, and I was living a very intense and fast-paced life. And I was so focused on making stuff and doing work that anything outside of that I really couldn't keep up with. So my life was a mess. I'd burn myself out a lot, and the way I would deal with it would be to work like crazy for as long as I could and then take a month off or something, or go to overseas, go to New York and hope that I would just reset and come back and things would be fine. But that didn't really work. And I started to feel like there was something really wrong with me, because I was so confused why I was so capable at working hard and succeeding in my work, which is difficult to do. And externally, I looked like I had my shit together. But I failed at doing the most basic things, and life got messier and messier. And I started to feel really selfish and irresponsible and childish. And I felt that it was really my responsibility to fix what I thought was wrong with me. Like I was kind of like a mechanic working on an old car. I thought I just needed to find or replace a few faulty parts and then I'd be good. So I started like being mindful of my diet, like cutting out meat, cutting out drinking, exercising, sleeping better, journaling, like all those like kind of base level like self-care stuff that we all know. And obviously those things help. Like my mental health was better. My like anxious thoughts definitely improved, and I felt a bit more balanced, but it didn't magically fix what I thought was wrong with me. So I kind of got further and further into the self-help kind of world. Like I listened to countless podcasts, and I read all the books recommended on the podcasts, and I tried meditation, and I saw psychics, and I saw healers, and I went to a shaman and did ayahuasca, and it was all in search of trying to fix the parts of me that I found unacceptable. And I felt like I was being told in these experiences to understand that I'm different and I'm unique and to accept myself. But I just wanted to be normal. So then COVID came and joined this fun party and pulled the rug out from under my feet. So I couldn't live at the fast and busy pace that I liked. And I couldn't go to another country when things got too hard. And there wasn't exciting new opportunities around the corner. And I had time. And I was older and wiser. But I still couldn't keep up with basic life things. My life was still so messy. And I still really thought that I could fix myself on my own, and I'm very like stubborn and independent that way. So I didn't want to see a psychologist until it was like, well, I guess I'll give anything a go. I just thought it would take a really long time, and then they would just tell me what I already knew about myself. And it did take a really long time, like countless sessions and taking up all this energy, and I was like very arrogantly thinking that they weren't going to tell me anything I didn't know. But it actually changed my life, because after many sessions, the psychologist had picked up on what I could not see and probably would have never seen in myself, and she said she wanted to assess me for ADHD. And it turned out that her hunch was correct, because after going through all the process and all the diagnosis, I was diagnosed with it. So I don't want to make this talk about ADHD and the symptoms and childhood and diagnosis and anything like that. To be honest, I actually don't like talking about it or declaring that I have it. And it's not because I'm ashamed, but I just want to protect myself from like opinions and assumptions about ADHD that so many people have, unfortunately, which I didn't realise until I started telling people, and then it's kind of started to upset me, and it just takes energy and like kind of felt like a step backwards from all this work that I've been doing to improve how I felt about myself. So I kind of just try to be really careful about who I tell and how I tell them. And just for anyone who doesn't have ADHD or is close with people who have it, I know it's hard to understand. So if you can just try to let go of any association you have with it and just pretend that I'm talking about like something that you've never heard of before. All you need to know is that people with ADHD are born with brains that look and work differently to people with normal brains. So yes, I'm very nervous about sharing my diagnosis, but the reason that I'm talking about it today is because it's a really important part of this story and the greater point that I'm making, because that is what it took for me to completely shift my understanding of myself. All this time I've been looking to replace some faulty parts, but this forced me to accept that the parts of me that I thought were unacceptable are the parts that I can't change. And it took a full and thorough medical diagnosis written on an official document by very smart people for me to accept what I had been told all along my whole life, from people who loved me and from strangers who had just met me, from healers and spirit guides. Like, I'm just different, and that's fine. And I was pushing that plate away, ignoring that for so long, and I refused to accept it until I had no choice to accept it. So I'm sharing this because I want to make a larger point about self-acceptance. Like, we all, whether we have a diagnosable brain or not, have parts of ourselves that we cannot control. And it's important to accept those parts make us who we are as a whole person. I think as people, we're able to look at the natural world and observe how plants and animals have evolved to their natural environment, and we don't assign moral judgment to how they've adapted to survive. But we struggle so hard to give ourselves the same grace. Everyone is born with genetic traits that they didn't choose. Some people have things happen to them outside of their control, sometimes really bad things, and you can't judge yourself for how you evolve based on those things. So basically what I'm saying is cut yourself some slack. So going through this has had such a positive impact on my creative work. I've always made work from as genuine a place as I could, but I feel like that now I'm making something that feels really honest, which is why I'm so proud of She's on Another Planet, and I'm really excited to see where my work is going to go from here. So I want to wrap this talk up on a less sentimental note and a more practical note, and share some advice which I've learnt from this whole journey about the creative process. So the first thing is accept chaos. So the creative process is messy. It's not linear. It's like a multiverse. So there's a start and a finish, but you can go up and down and back and forth and left and right the whole way. So if you accept this from the outset, you'll be less hard on yourself when things inevitably don't go as planned. Accept your strengths and your weaknesses. So you kind of need to know when you need help. So if you know what you are, weakness is like a bad word, I guess, but if you know like what you don't like doing or what you struggle to do, then if you know that from the outset, you can get help with it, or at least know that it's going to take you a little bit longer. And when it comes to your strengths, thing is with the creative process is like at some point along your project, like you're going to start talking about what you're doing, or maybe share some of your work, and people are going to give you unsolicited opinions and advice. So if you know what you feel really confident in, I feel like those comments are going to affect you less. So like I know that I'm really confident in my colours, even though I know they're colours that other people wouldn't choose. So if someone makes a comment at my colours, I don't question what I've done. I just like know that I'm doing the right thing because I'm making the choices for me. Accept the things you can't control. So this is one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. One of the best things I did for this exhibition process is focus purely on creating an outcome that I was proud of, because that was something that was in my control. So I try not to base my feelings of success or failure on external factors. And I think this is really important for creative people, especially these days in the age of social media, like to not base your feelings of your work based on external pieces of validation, like how much engagement you get or how many pieces you sell or the comments that people make or the awards that you win. If you know that like you're just doing it to make yourself proud, then you know like you kind of can't fail as long as you hold true to that. And then the last piece of advice for today is accept compliments. Most of the time when people say something nice about you or your work, they're being sincere. Maybe sometimes they're not, but the most likely scenario is that they're telling the truth. So just accept the compliment. I feel so lucky to have shared this room full of the most beautiful, talented, wonderful people I've ever seen. Thank you.